So in this presentation, we're going to be focusing on the 3ds Max Entertainment Creation Suite along with Smoke. 3ds Max, I think most of you are probably vaguely familiar with, and the fact that with the Entertainment Creation Suite, you get not just 3ds Max, but you get Mudbox and Motion Builder. And if you're in the Entertainment Creation Suite Premium, you also get Softimage. And so Louis is going to be taking a look at a few of those products in this process, but he's also going to carry us over to Smoke, which is our kind of post-production editing and effects package, and it is incredibly powerful. And you're going to see some of that from Louis, and then that demo is actually going to get carried over later to Ken over on the other side, who's going to complete the Smoke side of things. So you're in for a great treat for an hour. So Louis, why don't I hand it over to you and take it away.
Well, thank you, Sean. Yes, you mentioned it, so I'm going to cover multiple products within half an hour. So we have to talk about 3ds Max, Motion Builder, Mudbox, and Smoke. So I'm going to go pretty fast, but you know, Ken is faster than me, so it's gonna be a fast next hour. So what I'll do here is I've got a shot done in 3ds Max, and this is a camera move, and we have different elements in 3ds Max, and our goal is to produce this 48 frames shot, send it to Smoke, and finish it in Smoke. And Smoke is all-in-one editing and finishing, and you'll see how it can be used in a project like this. So before I jump in, we're going to take a look at a few elements in 3ds Max that I've done here, and especially the elements where I went to Mudbox and Motion Builder. So what I'll do here is I'll jump into, I want to create a crowd for the background here, and the way that I've done that, I went into, just going to go here in my perspective view, and we're going to turn off edge faces. Oops, my mouse is going crazy here, so I'm going to turn it off. And we've got this character here, and it's a cat rigged character. So if you take a look at this, we are, one of the things that I want to mention is that cat has been completely reworked on for the Service Pack 1 of 3ds Max. So if you work with cat, you'll see that we've compiled it for 64-bit. We've made it .NET compliant. So we've made a lot of efforts into making cat fully part of 3ds Max and much more stable than previous versions that we had for cat. So what I want to do now is I want to send this rig to Motion Builder, because my goal is to bring motion capture back onto this rig and in 3ds Max. So if I want to send that to Motion Builder, select everything here, and I'm going to go here and say send to Motion Builder, and we're going to send it as a new scene. So it's going to load it up in Motion Builder, and I can go here in Motion Builder, and you'll see that my scene is going to load. And automatically, when you load it to Motion Builder, it's going to create a 3ds Max camera to give you exactly the same point of view. So I'm just going to delete that. We're going to focus on our character here, and I'm going to show you the bones that we have from our cat rig. So right now, what we have is a mesh and a set of bones, but Motion Builder doesn't know what those bones are. So I need to go into the characterization tool, create a new character, and then start to define which part of the body each bone represents. So I'm going to double click here, grab the bone, do the same thing here on the forearm, and go on and so on and so forth. So what we have now is only 2 bones characterized. So you can use the templates, and I've prepared that before. So we've got cat base human, which is coming with Motion Builder by default. We're going to create our base character, and you see that all of the bones are matched by this template. I'm going to log this, say it's a biped, and we're going to create a control rig, FKIK, and as soon as we've got that done, if I go to the character control and we grab the hand here, you'll see that our cat character is now being recognized by Motion Builder. My goal in Motion Builder is not to do too much. I just want to load some motion on it. So I've got a file here in which I've done a few takes. So we've got 8 takes of crowd type animation. And I've done that with the Kinect at home with my girlfriend. So we've got cheering here, and it was very simple to do. And if you want to know more about how to hook up the Kinect to Motion Builder, you can go to my blog. It's area.autodesk.com/Louis, Louis, and I show a pretty extensive demo of how you can set up the Kinect inside of Motion Builder. It's it's giving you basic rotation for the main joints of your character. For a crowd, it's perfect. If it's your hero character, it's probably not sufficient. But for a crowd and multiple animations, we've got sufficient data to create something interesting. So, is it me that pops like this, or am I? So is it good? Okay, sorry. So what we want to do now is we want to grab this and this animation and feed it onto our character. And the way that we do that, I'll go here in the source, and I'll say I want to grab in the Kinect mocap. And as soon as you do that, you'll see that our character is now being animated exactly in the same way. I could use Motion Builder to tweak the animation, fix a couple of things, but we don't have much time today, so I'm going to bring it back immediately to 3ds Max to show you the workflow. So if I want to bring that back to 3ds Max, I need to bake this animation to the skeleton. Once it's on the skeleton, I'm going to go here and say File, Save that animation. I'm going to override this from motionbuilder.fbx. I'm fine with that. And we're going to save all of our takes. We only have one done. But now I can go back to 3ds Max. And if I want to load in an animation coming from Motion Builder onto CAD, I can go here and say File, Import. I'm going to grab this file that we just saved, import it. We're going to add it to our scene. We're going to bring in the animation, and I'm going to make sure here that we leave as bones so that we can see the bones. And it's going to bring in the animation like that. And unfortunately, I forgot to do one thing that's very important. So I'm going to delete that and bring that back in again. So import this FBX file, and we only did one take. So I'm going to go here and choose that take that we did. So we're going to take 7, and now we're going to import it, and it's going to be there in the back. So if I grab the pelvis here, I'm just going to make it a bit bigger so that we can easily see it in the scene. If I want to bring any type of animation on cat, I just grab the pelvis, go into animation, cat, capture animation. And the idea here is that we have a bunch of bones on which we want to map animation, and it could come from any source. So now it's an FBX file, but it could be a TRC cloud or any type of rig that you bring in and that you want to capture the animation from. So I'm going to grab the source object. It's that character here. It loads all the bones, and you see that the name match automatically because we send it to Motion Builder from here, so it's the same name. I'm going to say automap. It's going to automap that character, and as soon as we have the automap done, our character is animated exactly in the same way. So that's what I've done for the whole crowd, and if we take a look at the crowd final that we have, all of these characters have been animated with those 8 takes, and we just did some variation in there, and we have our crowd animation. So since it's in the back and it's very far, it doesn't matter that we don't have ends animation or feet animation. It's sufficient. We've got our crowd going. So now I want to show you how we can detail models using Mudbox. So it's pretty much the same type of workflow where we have a model here, it's a polygon model, and my goal is to add a texture, a very detailed, high detailed texture, and also add details to the surface of the to the surface so that it feels a bit more detailed. So we're going to go here and say send to Mudbox. I'm going to add to the current scene because I currently have a scene loaded in Mudbox to show you the final. And if I go to Mudbox, oops, not the right one. So to Mudbox, this is my scene here in Mudbox. And just to give you an idea, so I'm going to hide this, what I've exported from 3ds Max, and I'm going to open up or show my final terrain and show you the different elements, different details that I have added to the terrain. So I'm going to select it. We see that I've added some details to the surface, and that's just using the Mudbox tool that Craig showed a bit before. And I also added some details for the rocks and all of that. I went into the paint and I added a texture, so I painted that with the Mudbox. I added some cracks in the front here, and I added a bit of dirt here in the area there. So all of these details that I've painted in Mudbox, I want to send them back to 3ds Max. And the way you do that, for the texture, you can right-click here and say export channel to PSD, or import everything to, export to PSD. So if you export to a PSD, this is going to come as a layered PSD file. But what I like to do here is to go and say export all paint layers. So what we have is a system where every channel here and every layer is a separate map. So I can then combine them in 3ds Max and make some variations and do some tests with that. If I want to send the high detail to 3ds Max, I want to do a texture extraction. And what I've done in my case here is I've extracted the ambient occlusion from the high resolution mesh. I've also extracted the normal map, which gives me this, and also the vector displacement map, which gives me the height of the displacement, but also the direction. So we can have much more subtleties into the displacement with this tool. So if I send all of that back to 3ds Max, go back here to 3ds Max, what we have is a material that looks like this. So I've got a standard material. In the displacement map here, you see that I've got a vector displacement type so it feeds in with what I've done from in Mudbox. The normal map is here, and all of these layers that I've created for from the paint layers are loaded into a composite map, and the composite map allows me to to blend in all of these layers separately and adjust the opacity and all of that. So if I just go here and say assign to this object here and show it in the viewport, we now have our object ready to render and have the full details rendered and give me the detail from Mudbox. So what I'll do now is I'll jump back to my camera with the final scene. And what we want to do now is we want to start to send material to Smoke. So we've got different layers, we've got different components, and my goal in Smoke is to edit it together, but also I have two players or two characters that have been filmed in front of a green screen, and I want to incorporate them into that 3D camera movement. So I want to export a few things to Smoke. So the first thing I'll do is I'll use the new state sets that are here to export the rendered layers or the render passes that I want to use in Smoke. So right now I don't have any state sets, so I'm going to create a new state set, and I'm going to just rename this one background. Oops, forgot my C there. Background. And background is not defined yet, so we need to define it, and it's going to have a record mode. So I go here in record, and every changes that I'm going to make to my scene will correspond to that state set. So if I go here in the layer manager, I'm going to select all of the layers, and I'm going to hide everything. And once everything is hidden, all I have is just a background, so I'm going to turn that off. And now we have a scene set in which state set in which we have all the layers. But what's different from the scene states that we had before in 3ds Max is that I can go back here and edit those and say, for that state set, I want that to be visible, and you can change all of that. So all of the settings that you've changed will be recorded. If I exit this state, we go back to our original state, and if I jump into this state, it's going to hide everything. If I want to create a new state here, I'm going to go here and say that's going to be my stadium. And for the stadium, I'm going to go in record mode. I'm going to hide everything except everything that's related to the stadium. And now if I stop the recording, you'll see that the 6 layers have been changed, even if I change multiple, and if I go back to my original state. So you can create all of these. You can do material override. You can change the renderer if you want to. Scene state set will record everything that you're doing, all the changes, and it will allow you to render multiple passes for your scene. When you're ready to render, you can say set the render outputs to a common output folder, and you can go here and say render all states, and it's going to render everything that you've set up. The other thing that I want to mention that is very important about the way that I'm going to export to Smoke is that since I want to integrate elements into this 3D scene and that we have a 3D camera movement, what I want to do here, I'm going to jump into my scene and show you a few elements that I would like to export as well. So we've got a camera, and that camera is moving around the stage, and I would like to be reusing this camera movement into Smoke so that we can have exactly the same camera shot. So I'm going to go here and say I want to export that camera, but I want to have a good reference of where the stage is in 3D space, and also where that screen is in 3D space so that I can add text in Smoke. So for that, I'm going to go into the point helpers. I'm going to go in auto grid mode. I'm going to put a point helper at the top here, and I'm going to put another point helper right there. And the one on the stage here, I'm going to rise it up just a bit so that it's a bit above the platform, and I'll use these 2 point helpers as guide in 3D space in Smoke to be able to place my 2D elements correctly. So I grab all of this, save file, export selected, and I would export here as an FBX file, so I'm going to call that 3D position.fbx. And when you save this, I want to override, no problem. I'm going to turn off point cache. I want to export cameras. I don't have any lights, and I want to export the animation, and I want to make sure that I bake my animation as I export. The other thing that I can do with FBX export, I'm going to load up another scene here that I call 3D transition. And the 3D transition, what it does, it's basically just a camera pointing here. We've got a light, and we've got a piece of cloth there that just comes into frame and fills in the frame like that. So it just fills the frame. And I want to use that as a tool in smoke as a 3D transition. So I'm going to use this as a placeholder to create 3D transition in smoke. So if I want to export to smoke animation that has data or vertex transformation, I need to export the point cache file that comes with it. So I've point cached the cloth here. So I need to select all of the objects. That's the light, the cloth, and the camera. And then I want to export selected. I'm going to call that 3D transition.fbx. And this time, yes, I want to replace it. I want to bake the animation. And in the point cache here, I need to enable the point cache, and I need to grab which point cache that I want to export and say OK, and then we're exporting to the FBX file. So now I'm going to switch to smoke. If someone can switch my monitor here to smoke or to the Mac one. And this one here too. Is Sean around? Yeah, but I don't see it here. Can you switch me to the Mac? All right, let me just minimize this and minimize that. I'll go here. Oh, you see it, I don't. Okay, here we go. So this is the smoke user interface. As you can see, I've got a few layers there that I've okay, here we go. So I've got a few layers there. So I've got the light beams that I've rendered separately. I've got a few passes for fireworks that we've exported as well. I've got the stadium here and the alpha channel for the stadium. And I've got the background only that we've rendered separately. If I combine all of these together, what we get is something like that. And my colleague Ken will show you how we combine these layers a bit more in depth in his presentation. So what I've got here is just all of the layers combined together to give me the background. And also Ken is going to show you how we can add a volumetric light that will give you this effect of, kind of the mist inside of the scene here. So that's step number one, is we've created these clips, this clip that is going to represent our background. Where it's interesting is when you saw that I'd exported these position helper, and I want to place all of these things in context. So I've got my rendered front here, and I've got the platform rendered alpha as well. And I've got these two layers, and I would like to place them in context on top of that platform. So what I'll do is I'll jump into action, which is our 3D compositing environment inside of Smoke. And I'm just going to maximize this view here so we can see. So right now into this environment, it's a 3D space on which I only have a camera, and we're looking at the scene through the camera. We have nothing yet, but I can go into the node bin here, and node bin, and grab a import object. And as I import, I can go to my folder and say I want to import the platform 3D position, the one that we exported a bit before. We exported the camera, and we exported a point helper for the player position and a point helper for the text position that I want to place in front of the screen there. So we have our camera here. If I just orbit around, you will see that we have our position helper and the camera as exported from 3ds Max. And I'll jump in here, and we want to look at the scene from that camera. So I'm going to click on that camera and make it in context. So now we're looking at the scene through the FBX camera, and you see that these position helpers are exactly where they're supposed to be. Now we just need to bring the footage together into that space. So if I want to bring in I'm going to bring in the front here, like that. So it's going to be also a 3D object. It's a plane right now that is at 0, 0, 0. So if we just orbit around, we don't see it yet. It's at the bottom there. So what I'll do is I'll just grab this and I'll place it. So I'll connect it to the camera here so that the camera defines the position. So now this plane here is exactly at the same location as the camera. So if I go to my object itself here and I just bring it back, we'll see that it's going to go in front of the camera. And I'm going to match the size of the frame here. And once it's matched, I can go here and say auto scale on all transforms. So if I bring it back forward, you see that it looks the same in the screen here. So I'm going to say go at -480. I know that's where I want it to be. And now if I play this, you'll see that we've got our rendered shot as a front, and you see that our position helpers are matching perfectly. So now I can start to bring in more footage into this. So we're going to bring the player. So I'm going to grab this one and also this one and exit clip select. So what we have now is those two players. The player position should be this one here, so I'm going to connect those two. And then now the players are in position. This is a full HD footage, so it's a bit bigger. So I'll go back here to the object, I'll grab the parent, and I'll scale it down. So, and actually, I think a value of 13 is good for what I want to do. And now what we have is those players are exactly there in position, but you see that the plane are turning, so they're not always facing the camera. So I can grab this axis here, and I can say, always look at that camera. So it's kind of an aim at constraint. And now what we have is the planes are always looking at the camera. The thing here that you will notice is that they have been shot in front of a green screen, so I want to key the green out. So I'm going to go into my media. You see that the media has some basic operations that we can do, like color correction and also keying. So if I double click on keying here, it's going to bring me into that keyer. Keying in smoke is very simple. Just grab the color here, go across. This is my ending color, and now the green has been removed. If I take a look at the matte for this is what we have. So I'm going to play with the histogram here to adjust it, to remove the black areas there, maybe a bit more, and reduce the problem here in the white, like that. And we've got a pretty good matte for the player here. Once this is done, we can go into the garbage mask, add, and we're going to add a garbage mask surrounding that player. And once you're done, I can close this. We're going to make it outside and bring it to a value of 0. So we're going to check if it fits all through the animation. Once it's done, just going to return, and you see that my player is now keyed. I'm going to grab this key, copy it, and paste it here. They were shot in exactly the same context, so I know that both of them will work because the green is exactly the same, lighting is exactly the same. If I grab this here, the players, I can place them exactly where I want them to be. So I'm going to raise them a bit higher. Oops, move. I'm going to grab this one here. I'm going to move it a bit more to the left, a bit higher as well, and maybe more towards the front. And I'm going to grab the player on the right, move it a bit more to the right, something like that. And I'm going to move it back. So as we turn around, we'll see that they kind of jump in front of each other, and we have that 3D movement. So even if we had 2D planes, they're looking pretty well in that 3D space. We have a text that we would like to bring onto that screen here. So I'll go into the node bin. We have a 3D text. I'm going to bring it in here. Now it's at 0, 0, 0. So I would like that to be in the position of this axis that we brought in. And now we have our text in position. So I'm going to turn off auto key. We're going to make some adjustment to that text. So I'm going to maybe reduce the grab the text, not the. So I'm going to say tonight. We're doing an advertisement spot for a show that happens tonight at 7. Enter. This is a bit big, so I'm going to reduce the size of this. We're going to put it right there and maybe lower it a bit, something like that. And now we have our motion, and it works pretty well all together. So what we've done from Max, we've exported the camera and the positioner for the players and also the text, and we were able to combine all of that in Smoke using this data. So another thing that I've prepared from 3ds Max is a 3D transition. So I would like to bring in this clip. It's a station ID made by Digital Tutors. So I would like to thank them for letting us use their footage. And I want to do the same thing. I want to use the FBX file. So I'm going to go into Action. And in Action, I'm going to jump right away into the camera view here. So that's my camera. I have nothing yet in my scene, so I'm going to bring in an import. I'm going to grab that 3D transition. Now it's going to take a bit longer to load because we've got some point cache animation. I'm going to grab the camera. I want this to look at the scene through the camera. And as we play in, you see that we've got this flag coming in. Now the material is a substance map. So you see that substance map are supported. So you can create a substance map in Max and load it inside of Smoke. I'm not going to use this. So we have now our surface. It's not shaded, so I'm going to turn on the shading. And we'll see that we've got this piece of cloth that's coming into frame and fills the screen. So I'm ready to load my footage. I'm going to grab this footage here. It's going to load in as an object, but I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to trash this. But the media has been loaded. So if I just grab the media, I'm going to turn off the matte so that it's an opaque image. And if I go back to my node bin, I'm going to grab a material. It's going to be connected to that geometry. And the maps, I'm going to grab a diffuse map, and it's going to automatically apply that as a diffuse map. So now what we have is this piece of cloth coming into frame, and it fills the screen, and it gives me the station ID. So I'm ready to bring all of these together. We've got 0 seconds left, so I'm going to do it super fast. So I'm just going to go here, and I want to bring my background clip here. We've got our station ID with the 3D transition, and we've got our players here. So if I go, I'm going to create a new sequence. We're going to go into a record timeline. I'm going to add a few layers. So I've got three pieces of footage that I want to combine together. And I'm going to just go and grab the footage for the background. That's going to be my record area here. So that's the result of what I'm doing. I'm going to grab the players here. I'm going to bring them into the timeline. As you can see, it's working, but we don't have an alpha channel. So I'm going to go grab it here from the, grab this one, not this one. So I'm just going to trash this. Grab this one here, apply an axis, and grab the matte. And now you see that I've got my matte defining the transparency. And I'd like to bring this into my final shot, and I'd like to align it with the end of the shot. So I'm going to go into a source and record player. So if you're an editor, you know that kind of interface. So what I'll do is I'll just find that spot where it fills the screen, and I'll go at the end of my clip here, and I want that to be pretty much aligned with that. So I'm going to say align edit, and now we're back here. I can grab this and say I want to provide the alpha channel for this transition. And now what we have is our spot where we've got tonight at 7, and then we've got the flag coming in and filling the screen. So if you take a look at what we have now, I'm just going to finish this with this. We've got tonight at 7. Very easily, we were able to create tomorrow as well, and next, because the way that it works in Smoke is that I can copy my whole timeline, go back into a timeline here, record timeline, go back to my players, and you see that there's a little H here, so when I prepared that clip, I also save its history. So if I double click here, it's going to bring me back to action, and I will be able here to switch to the schematic view and show you that I've got everything back. So if I go back to my camera and show you here the camera and the complete scene, you'll see that if I grab the text, I can go back here and say thank you. Oops, thank you. Exit. And now what we have is our shot that says thank you, and it's now a new record timeline. So thank you very much, and your turn, Ken, to show a bit more about Smoke.